Make-A-Wish game! Don't miss Trump next time.
Kyle expressing his disappointment with the would-be assassin missing Donald Trump reportedly took Jack Black by complete surprise.
God damn it! God, Kyle!
And seemingly ended Tenacious D, a response which signals a major cultural shift. The attempted assassination of Trump shocked the world, yet it should have come as no surprise. Not with the establishment elite and media for several years now having repeated the message that Orange Man Bad is a dictator who will end democracy and who must be stopped at all costs. A message that Hollywood, our biggest stars and entertainers have been all too happy to parrot, and further to their respective audience and fan bases. What culpability do they have for rising the temperature to the point of attempted assassinations, and according to some, driving America to the brink of civil war? Evidently some, because Deadline Hollywood now argues that when the dust settles, it may be time for a Hollywood political reboot. Let's dive in. First of all, this channel is not a political channel, we're all about entertainment. Alas, we sometimes have no choice but to cross the border into politics, as politics is downstream from culture, and our culture and entertainment have become politicized more than anyone in the audience ever would have wanted. That is a state of affairs that Hollywood itself, and more than a few high-profile actors and celebrities, have aggressively pushed towards, up to and including the message that unless the Orange Man Bad is defeated, democracy dies. And for so aggressively pushing that rhetoric, Hollywood must share its part of the responsibility for things getting as heated as they now are. Case in point, even Deadline Hollywood is writing about it, which indeed is what inspired and the central topic of this video. To put that article into context though, we do have to venture a little bit into the political arena, as we after all are all about context here at Midnight's Edge. But who am I to say anything about this? Because as the more perceptive of you may have realized, I am not American, nor am I even a native English speaker. Hence, I do not get a vote in US elections, and on past occasions such as these, I have tended to state that US elections is a fight in which I do not have a dog, so all I could do was offer the relatively neutral musings from an outsider's perspective looking in. While I can still do that, offer the perspective of an outsider, that of a global citizen of the world, to paraphrase Bob Iger, I can no longer make the claim that the outcome of this election is a fight in which I have no dog, nor can I claim complete neutrality. While that may have been the case in the not too distant past, it no longer is. For all of Biden's bragging in recent big boy press conferences about how amazing he is and how everyone around the world loves him, with few exceptions, the entire world is in fact in a much darker place now than it was 4 years ago, and the actions and policies of the Biden administration have played a direct and significant role in that. So while I don't get to vote in this election, like everyone else in the world, I am affected by the outcome. So I'm not gonna pretend not to have a preference where that outcome is concerned. The Hollywood elite has a preference as well, of course, and as we shall see as soon as we get into that Deadline Hollywood article I'm building towards here, that would be whomever is blue, no matter who. In 2016, it was Hillary. It was Biden in 2020, and this year it's Biden again. Unless he's maneuvered out or keels over before the election, then it will be whomever the party replaces him with. All the major Hollywood trades have covered news pertaining to the two candidates, with the slant that of course they're in favor of the Democrat, and of course the entirety of their readership is as well. That's just a given, because how could anyone not be? Let's go back in time to 2016, when the hottest actors of the day, all members of the Hollywood elite and modern aristocracy, came out in droves to convince you, the pleb, the unwashed masses, to bow down to their authority as famous people and vote in the upcoming election.
On Tuesday, November 8th, this country will make one of the most important
decisions in its history.
You have a chance.
You have an obligation
to be a part of that decision.
You might think it's not important. You might think you're not important.
But that's not true.
And the only way we can prove that to you is by having lots of famous people.
Lots of famous people.
Lots and lots of famous people.
just a shit ton of famous people.
Repeating how important.
How important it is. Register.
Vote.
There's so many famous people.
Some of us aren't as famous, but still pretty famous.
Like, you've seen us somewhere.
Sometimes a not famous person will be mixed in with the famous ones
They drive the message home.
because of their unpolished sincerity.
Their unpolished sincerity.
But you only get this many famous people together if the issue's
one that truly matters to all of us.
Let me translate that for you. They were all offered well-paid influencer gigs, with the intent that the star-struck pleb would ask themselves, what could possibly be so important that all of these famous people would unite over it, Avengers style? Well, it's not just that you vote, but by implication that you keep the Democrats in power and vote for Hillary Clinton, as Donald Trump, who up until that point had been beloved in Hollywood, now suddenly had been declared a crazy racist that would start World War III. Let's see the manipulation and appeal to authority continue, as the aristocrats lets you, the pleb, know which cause is so important that they all assembled for it.
A disease or
ecological crisis or
A racist, abusive coward who could permanently damage the fabric of our society.
Do the math. And do we really want to give nuclear weapons to a man whose signature move is firing?
firing things?
but we can end this nightmare before it begins.
We can save the day.
For our children.
For our children.
For our children.
For our communities.
For our communities.
For our communities.
For America.
For America.
For America.
Yeah, cry some more for America. That would surely go down in flames unless Hillary was elected to take over the baton from Obama. Hillary herself was even more direct about what Trump represented, beginning a narrative that is now accepted without question.
He is threatening our democracy.
Being staunchly Team Blue, Hollywood went all in on that messaging. They got so involved that the contemporary Paul Feig's female-centric Ghostbusters remake even got caught up in and became part of the election cycle, to the point where going to see that movie became a political act. Also, as old-time viewers of this channel will recall, the marketing for that soon-to-be a massive flop even demarked the first-time audiences who weren't receptive to radical DEI reinterpretations of established franchises were smeared as Trump supporters. On a related note, many in Hollywood to this day root for the revived original Ghostbusters franchise to fail, because like Leslie Jones, they still associate it with Trump, however ridiculous and unwarranted that may be. But going back to 16, when Trump did win, Hollywood collectively lost their minds, and no doubt partially in response to that, they went all in on DEI. Which, combined with the streaming wars, lockdown, and a couple of poorly timed yet self-imposed strikes, turned out to be an absolute disaster for them, contributing towards a massive implosion plaguing the entire industry right now as we speak. A notable example here is Terminator Dark Fate, a movie that the producers bragged was designed as a direct commentary on Trump's policies, which, as it turned out, did not translate into a movie the audience responded to, far from it. But despite Hollywood, and the media, and the late-night talk show hosts where the two intersect, only escalating their attacks on Orange Man Bad, increasingly declaring him Hitler, the world at large kept on turning. Contrary to what Americans had been threatened with, including by Hollywood and the celebrity elite, there was no turning back of time. No women were forced to wear Handmaid's Tale outfits. No rights were taken away from the gay population, or indeed anyone else. Abortions were still possible to get, and most importantly, no nuclear bombs were launched. On the contrary, no new wars were started. More than that, a number of the older ones were de-escalated, and prior to the lockdowns. The US economy was genuinely booming, not just the stock market, lifting the world economy in the process. You'd never learn that from the media though, which treated every new mean tweet as another 9/11. During the Summer of Love, featuring fiery but mostly peaceful protest from well-funded Antifa agitators, Biden ran on a platform of unifying America after Trump had divided it. Though from my vantage point, it looked like the media, Democratic Party, and Hollywood were actually the ones driving that division. And in the end, Biden was declared victorious, and though Trump never admitted defeat. And there was a kerfuffle along the way which enabled a real event to be exacerbated and weaponized in the retelling. Trump in the end stepped aside and handed the keys to the White House over to Biden. 2 years into his presidency, before Trump had even confirmed that he would be running again, Biden made this rousing and unifying speech to his people.
Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic. But there's no question that the Republican Party today is dominated, driven, and intimidated by Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans. And that is a threat to this country. MAGA Republicans do not respect the Constitution. They do not believe in the rule of law. They do not recognize the will of the people. MAGA forces are determined to take this country backwards to an America where there is no right to choose, no right to privacy, no right to contraception, no right to marry who you love. Trump and the extreme MAGA Republicans quote a clear and present danger to our democracy. But while the threat to American democracy is real, I want to say as clearly as we can, we are not powerless in the face of these threats. MAGA Republicans have made their choice. They embrace anger. They thrive on chaos. They live not in the light of truth, but in the shadow of lies. We've told ourselves that American democracy is guaranteed, but it's not. We have to defend it, protect it, stand up for it. Each and every one of us. We're all called by duty and conscience to confront extremists who put their own pursuit of power above all else. We must be stronger, more determined, and more committed to saving American democracy than MAGA Republicans are to destroying American democracy. MAGA Republicans look at America and see carnage and darkness and despair. They spread fear and lies. Lies told for profit and power. The MAGA Republicans believe that for them to succeed, everyone else has to fail.
Speaking purely as an outside observer, I do not find that these words jive well with any action or policy during the Trump years. And what is more, it doesn't sound very unifying to me. I mean, I could be wrong, I am after all not American. But to me, it sounded like Biden spoke about a third of his populace in similar terms as Bush did about Al-Qaeda and Obama did about ISIS. There must have been something to it though, because that has been the narrative of the Democratic Party, the media, and Hollywood, and the celebrity class ever since. That Trump and his MAGA followers are an existential threat to democracy and must be stopped by any means and at any cost, because he is another Hitler and Mussolini.
What do you say to those who say, I don't like the guy, but I'm going to vote for him? What's your message to them?
I don't understand it. I don't think they understand how dangerous it will be if he ever, God forbid, becomes president. I don't think they really understand. And historically, from what I see, even in Nazi Germany, they had it with Hitler. They don't take him serious. He looks like a clown, acts like a clown. Mussolini, same thing.
We could have played hours on end of similar sentiments from the corporate media, but here is but a small sampling.
Donald J. Trump presents a clear and present danger to our democracy.
This would be the end of America. If this is what we're going to be, This won't be a democracy. That's a monarchy. It was repugnant.
An actual Trump-led wannabe empire is the end of democracy.
A re-election of Donald Trump could mean the end of democracy.
When will America stop sleepwalking towards the end of democracy?
Right. Increasingly, Donald Trump is turning this nation into Nazi Germany.
I hate comparing Trump to Hitler because Hitler could concentrate for more than 30 seconds.
I want to start using the word fascist.
Yeah, he's a fascist.
And tendencies, many tendencies like Adolf Hitler.
You don't have a president, as you said, talking about exterminating Latinos.
This is not a reach. I could go back and talk about Nazi Germany, and I do it without any concerns whatsoever. And if people can't start drawing the parallels, well, you're just stupid, or you have your head in the sand, or you're one of them.
It's just unquestionable at this point that that man cannot see public office again. He is not only unfit, he is destructive to our democracy, and he has to be eliminated.
However, even on the left, among the most progressive of progressives, there are those who see that despite the external threat to democracy messaging, those behind that messaging might not themselves actually believe it. Which is the only conclusion that can be drawn from a significantly weakened Biden being allowed to remain at the top of the Democratic ticket.
And we're told that the threat of Trump is so great and the stakes are so high that even bringing up these absolutely legitimate concerns about the president's ability to do the most vigorous job in the world for the next 4 years is enabling fascism. Yet even the president doesn't seem particularly alarmed.
If you stay in and Trump is elected and everything you're warning about comes to pass, how will you feel in January?
I feel as long as I gave it my all and I did the goodest job as I know I can do. That's what this is about.
Pay close attention to this next clip from the Young Turks, where Cenk Uygur reveals the inside word on why no one wants to challenge Biden as the Democratic nominee following the assassination attempt on Trump. It is a bit lengthy, but it is very revealing.
For some reason, the attempt on Donald Trump's life that tragically took the life of one of the rallygoers and injured others means that the quest to replace Joe Biden with someone better situated to challenge Trump in the general election is over. And there's a lot coming out of all of this that we've discussed, I know, Cenk, that seems very illogical. I don't understand this. I mean, I get emotionally why some Democrats would lose their spine. They were probably looking for a reason to lose their spine, and this seems like a good one. But I don't understand the logical connection. If everybody seems to agree that for whatever reason this will help Trump, then wouldn't you want a better candidate even more?
Yeah, and there's a difference between Democratic voters, Democratic politicians overall, and specifically Democratic politicians who might challenge Joe Biden. So apparently one of the things that has happened is that the people that could have challenged Joe Biden have now gotten nervous, and they believe after the assassination attempt that Donald Trump might win no matter what and no matter who. So then they think, well, who cares about Democratic voters and democracy and all those things that we were BSing about? So what they actually care about is their own careers. So they think, well, I don't want to burn my chances against Donald Trump, who now looks really strong, so I'll wait till 2028. And so if they really think democracy is on the line, there isn't going to be a 2028. So obviously they never meant it. They were lying all along just as a political punchline.
So the whole end of democracy shtick is but a punchline that not even the Democrats actually believe, but it's the only argument they have against Trump. Now that does jive with what I see from where I'm standing. Alas, this messaging has now been repeated so often that a large portion of the country, and even the world outside of it, actually believe it. Celebrities like Mark Hamill, Stephen King, George Takei, and many others certainly do, and they are far from alone.
Take a look at what happened.
In the aftermath of the attempted assassination on Trump, no clear motive or group affiliation of the alleged shooter has been presented, which means that the emerging mainstream narrative is that this was just a lone wolf who was able to find a prime location where the Secret Service politely ignored him until he had pulled the trigger. From that then, many concluded that the frequently repeated message that democracy itself is about to die may have been the motivation. That caused a lot of flack against Biden, forcing a short-lived White House admission that maybe the tone needs to be taken down a notch. But I stress short-lived, because as far as I can see, Team Blue doesn't have any widely recognized success stories of their own to run on.
Have you taken a step back and done a little soul-searching on things that you may have said that could incite people who are not balanced?
Well, I don't think, look, how do you talk about the threat to democracy, which is real, when a president says things like he says? Do you just not say anything because it may incite somebody?
Not much soul-searching to be found there. But what about Hollywood? Will there be any soul-searching there? Is there any realization that, oh shit, we may have gone a bit too far on this one and the audience is leaving in droves because of it? Well, actually, yes. After what ended up being a little bit longer lead-in than I had planned, let's finally get to the main story of the day, what kicked off this video, the Deadline Hollywood editorial. When the dust settles, it might be time for a Hollywood political reboot, which reads: Robert De Niro ranted, Bette Midler blared about autocracy, Lea DeLaria declared war, but Donald Trump, though convicted in New York and shot in Pennsylvania, is still marching towards Milwaukee, where the Republican National Convention begins tomorrow, or at least it did when this article was published. Meanwhile, George Clooney called for a new Democrat nominee. Rob Reiner seconded the motion. Damon Lindelof went all in, calling for a donor strike. But their forsaken champion, Joe Biden, is still slouching toward Chicago, intent on securing his party's nomination at the Democratic Convention next month. When this mess resolves, as it must sooner or later, Hollywood might want to rethink its political habits, because the current approach clearly isn't working. And to make that clear, what the author of this article feels isn't working is the blind allegiance to the party, as in the Democrat Party. Hammering in that point, the piece continues. And make no mistake, it is deeply embarrassing that people as sophisticated as Clooney, Reiner, Lindelof, and many more were publicly endorsing and raising money for Biden, only days before his performance at the June 27th debate made clear what less beclouded observers had known a year: that Biden was caught in an age-related decline. Actually, less beclouded observers had known that a hell of a lot longer than 1 year, but for Hollywood, even that is a big admission. Case in point, referencing that quote, a true believer in Deadline Hollywood's comment section replied, "Yeah, stopped reading your nonsense right there," which only goes to show the need for an article like this in the Hollywood trades, because the denial of basic reality runs deep. The piece continues. What matters is that big Hollywood players, who are supposed to have the inside track, called on the rest of us to support a candidate whom they would abandon 2 weeks later. With that reversal, their credibility died, and related calls for a more viable candidate won't bring it back. What's needed when this is over is a reboot, a revised way of looking at the relationship between Hollywood and Washington. The article then goes through the historic relationship between Hollywood and Washington, suggesting that by the 1990s, the Democrats had a chokehold on the industry, and how the author even has personal experience with donations to the party being a requirement for career progression, and how outright contempt for all things Republican begun in the 2000s, though it fever pitched under Trump. The article then gets to the main point. For the good of Hollywood and the rest of us, that monoculture needs to break down. That doesn't mean Democrats have to support Republicans. It'll never happen. This is correct. The true believers in Hollywood will never falter in their loyalty to the party. Here's the thing though, as this author even pointed out, allegiance and donations to the party are often a requirement for career progression, which means many in Hollywood are only feigning loyalty to further their own careers. That's the hallmark of a cult. as well as bigotry and discrimination. And keep in mind, for every out Dean Cain or Gina Carano, there are 100 more closeted conservatives in the industry. But then the article gets real. Ari Emanuel, a true political sophisticate, was clearly onto something when he noted in Aspen that donors were suddenly shifting their sights from the presidency to House and Senate races. Note the implication of that, because it's a major one. If the Hollywood Democrat donors have shifted their attention to the House and Senate races, that not only means they have given up on keeping the presidency, it also means that they believe democracy will continue, and that there will still be a House and Senate under a second Trump term, just like the Young Turks reported. In other words, not even the Hollywood donors genuinely believe democracy will end under Trump. The piece then concludes by gently suggesting to its audience of rabid Hollywood Democrat hardliners, a next step might be as simple as a conversation with somebody on the other side, in lieu to those diatribes on X. You don't have to agree, but it can't hurt to know what they're thinking. They might know something. They might even save you from pratfalls, somersaults, and embarrassing reversals in the op-ed pages of the New York Times. See, Kyle Gass, someone who lives inside a Democratic bubble, should have read this article before wishing the would-be assassin had better aim. He didn't get that the pendulum has shifted now, so instead of high fives, he got fired by his agent. He blew up Tenacious D, and he sent a lot of blowback Jack Black's way in the process. All because he was out of touch with the real world and he didn't know it. That is kind of the point of this article. It is ever so gently letting the Hollywood true believers know that they're out of touch, and that remaining so could blow up in their faces, so they need to de-radicalize, to take the very first steps towards breaking from their echo chamber, and gradually realize that it's a big world out there and they might not have all the answers. I would add to that when you in the Hollywood elite think you are being virtuous activists for some idiot cause or other, and that everyone looks up to you, the reality is that a great many people think you are nothing but brainwashed, holier-than-thou sanctimonious assholes. Ricky Gervais said it best, speaking on behalf of the people of the world, when he told the Hollywood A-listers straight to their face.
So, if you do win an award tonight, don't use it as a platform to make a political speech, right? You're in no position to lecture the public about anything. You know nothing about the real world. Most of you spent less time in school than Greta Thunberg. So, if you win, right, come up, accept your little award, thank your agent and your God, and fuck off, okay?
Ricky Gervais is of course entirely right. Just stick to entertaining people. And if you have to be activists for some idiot cause, maybe research it in advance, from several different points of view, so you don't look like the out-of-touch fools that you are, or torch your own legacy, like Robert De Niro did, warning about what he himself came across as. I know a great many people now find his movies to be unwatchable, because it's difficult to separate the art from the artist when the artist is that unlikable, and when you realize that those facial expressions of his aren't acting. He does that all the time anyway. He should probably see a neurologist about that. But rounding out and taking the outside view, I think there is a threat to democracy, just not what you have been told. No, the real threat is an uninformed, or worse yet, disinformed electorate, who votes based on fear-mongering and party punchlines, without doing their own research or due diligence, and who thus may vote against their own interest because they were misled. I've seen that happen several times in my country, but us voting in the wrong party rarely affects anyone else. I'm obviously not going to tell you what to vote, and as long as you do your research and know full well what you're voting for, I respect your decision, as should everyone. But leaving the election and political parties aside, Do you think Hollywood will be able to respect anyone voting differently than what their opinion leaders would like? And do you think there's any chance a Hollywood political reboot might actually happen after the election? Let me know in the comments.